there, welcome to the Surfcast Podcast. We got a special episode today because this is the very first episode of Season 2 of the Surfcast Podcast.
Yay.
We made it through year 1.
Yay. Here we are.
It's been a great year. I want to thank everyone, all the listeners, obviously, who continue to listen, give us the great ideas, the great feedback, ask us for longer episodes. That's about the only thing we're not going to honor right now. We'll try to keep it trimmed down a bit better, but I'm already going on and on here, but I wanted to make sure I said thank you to everybody out there listening and continued listening as we got some great stuff in the works for 2025.
Yep, that's right. We're going to be pushing to make this even bigger, better, and badder, whatever that means.
More batterer.
More batterer. Yeah. So today, as part of our Season 2 opener, we are going to talk about a topic that has come up so many times in the podcast in the past, and yet we never addressed it in an episode. And jumping way ahead, and a spoiler, we're not going to even come close to covering all of it, even remotely. Just the tiniest tip of the iceberg, right, Toby? Today, that's for sure. What's that?
There's a lot to it, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the darter. We're going to talk about darter today. We're actually going to talk about it maybe in a little bit of a Bill Wetzel on Instagram sort of way. Yeah, exactly. Shout out to Bill. We are not going to be giving a specific, like, darters in the big surf, darters in sand eels, darters on Montauk, yellow darters are the best, etc. We're going to kind of just give you some of our very basic beginning thoughts to get the ball rolling on the darter. And so there's probably too long an introduction to tell you that basically you're not going to get everything about the darter today. That's what I mean to say, basically.
But stay tuned. We'll try to get to it in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as if we could do, this could not be the Surfcast podcast. It could be the Darter podcast, and we could have an episode friggin' every week for the next 10 years. That's not an exaggeration. And maybe that's a great way to start it and just say, that's how important it is in my surf bag. And that's how much I use it, and that's how much I have to say about it. I'm being a little bit sarcastic, but I think we could do a full year easily. I think we could do multiple years easily. 100 episodes on the darter? Yeah, I think we could. I think it's that important. What do you think, Toby?
Oh, certainly. It's that important in my arsenal, without a doubt. I mean, it's one of 2 plugs that is in my surf bag no matter where I go. So, yeah.
That's right. I think that's true for me, too. I feel very uncomfortable to the point of almost virtually never doing it, of not having a darter in my bag. And I know you fish a pretty good variety of spots and structure and stuff. I fish a huge variety of spots and structure and areas and stuff. And it doesn't matter what the wind is doing, and it doesn't matter what the water's doing almost all the time. I was about to say half the time or most of the time. No, it's like 98% of the time. I have it in there. It's like my emotional support plug.
Even, like, I'm thinking that through, even if I'm packing a bag and, like, it's the open surf and I know it's probably going to be those rare occasions where it's just too much wind, too much surf, whatever, I'm still putting a darter in just in case I can't fish. I'm probably going to throw it. Even if I know it isn't going to work, I'm taking a cast with that darter. Like, I don't even know if I could come up with, I probably cast a darter, made at least one cast every single outing this year and previous seasons as well. There's no other plug that has that kind of, like, usage in my arsenal by any means.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I'd have to think about that. I think I probably, it's 1% or 4% or something of the times that I don't make a cast, but I bet that's true. It really is one of the only plug that is always in my bag, no matter what. Even if the wind is blowing 40 knots, and I'm like, the chances of me throwing this are almost nothing. That, shout out to him, that specifically, the Super Strike is in the bag for that specifically. But there are times that other ones maybe get thrown more, or very rarely that doesn't end up in the bag at all, that specific darter. But there really is not too much else. I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but really the Sluggo or like a Hoagie or something in that size and shape of soft plastic is usually what I'm throwing beside, or excuse me, living in the bag.
Yeah.
So, Toby, let me ask you a question that just came to the top of my head. Was there like a moment for you with the darter? Was there like a, this singular event where you were like, I get it. It's here. I'm a believer. Did you have a moment like that in your history?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
Yeah, there's one time, and it wasn't like, so I used the darter before this time, and I can't even pinpoint really exactly what it was about this spot scenario experience, but that's sort of like, if you want to do a timeline, there's like pre-darter and post-darter in Surfcasting, and that's where I'd put the mark. Before that, it was just something that was sort of in there, and I'd throw it and I'd fish it. But I was fishing a South County, Rhode Island beach, and I got to the spot. I was much younger. I was running the beaches at this time, driving on the beaches, and I got to this spot, and meeting up with a couple of buddies that I'd been fishing with, and go out, and I start casting, and everybody's casting, and they were catching fish, and as far as I remember, I might have had, like, I was doing okay, but not really well, and I would kind of consider I was still I was definitely in a learning stage of my career, like learning a lot more. I was still fresh, and like that exciting stage was still there in my life.
Yeah, the beginner's mind sort of stuff. Yeah.
Like I wasn't by any means a beginner, but I still had that mindset.
Yeah,
I still learn stuff now, but the swath of options to learn, and it was much more wide open. So I wasn't throwing a darter to start with. Now, if I went there, I'd be like, first thing I'm throwing. But they're hitting fish on the darter, and I'll even throw in, they were throwing teasers above them, which we know my teasers thoughts.
Okay,
But,
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good teaser plug, though. Just sidebars. Good teaser plug.
And that night, they were bringing in at times, a 20-pound class on the teaser and a 20-pound class on the darter.
That's sick. That's
consistently.
Sick. Yeah.
But it was just the experience of that night. And I remember, like, yelling over to my buddy Dave, like, what the F are you throwing? What is it? Like, because I'm doing some fish, but you guys are obviously doing better. And he's yelled back, blurple darter. And I got one of those, and I put it on, and I don't remember from that point forward on that night if I did any better or like how it went for me from there, but it was something about the whole experience. Like, I can still see it in my mind. As I'm telling this, I can see the way the moon was on the water, the surf, hell, the rock I was standing on and the rock Dave was standing on. I know and they're different now with beach changes. I still can see it so vividly, which is why I put that night and that experience as a whole as like the pre-darter and then the post-darter, to the point where, like I said, now that darter is in my bag every single night I surf fish.
So what was specifically, like, what do you think the darter was doing on that particular night? What was it that night, you think?
That's, if somebody was like describing sort of what would be the traditional key elements to a surf conditions for the darter. We had a good sweep. We had some waves rolling, white water forming on what became this small point right in front of us. So it's that conditions of, big surf, but not too big. Water coming across. You're really able to stay in contact. It's that darter water was really there that night. And, my metal lips that I was throwing, I'm sure, were just tumbling around and wasn't getting the right feel. I do remember putting a darter on and like just coming tight to it and getting that feel that I know now of like, something's going to hit this, that excitement. And it was definitely that feel. Perhaps that's what it is. That night helped to solidify the darter confidence through the feel and then the thought that this is doing what it's supposed to, and the fish responded to it.
Was there like a bait or something, or the fish were just feeding?
There was no bait that I recall specifically. I know it was early fall, so I'm guessing, and especially with this spot, there was probably some mullet around. Again, South County, Rhode Island, fall mullet.
Yeah, right. It's like saying that there were peanuts in New Jersey in the fall. It's like synonymous.
I
Gotcha.
don't know so much that it was a bait thing as much as it was just sort of, the sum of all the parts came together, and that it was the right darter equation, and talking to guys afterwards, like, that's a darter spot. I hear it from a lot
Sure.
of people. So, before that, I was still in that learning stage, and I didn't associate it with that at that point. But now I'm like, yeah, that spot's darters.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's to know. It's funny, thinking like on the fly. If I could think then or know then what I kind of know now too, like where that was going to blossom into, and my love for it. Because again, I remember I had one Blurple Super Strike Darter, and I think I might have written about that in SJ. That might have been part of my Blurple debunking Blurple
Okay.
article that I wrote
Okay.
not too long ago. Was based on it, where I had like one. I had one of those left, and ended up losing it eventually. But yeah, at that point I had one Super Strike Blurple Darter. Like, I have a dozen of them
Yeah,
now.
I was gonna say now that's yeah, right. It's right. I think when I counted last, I think I had like 36 or 37 Super Strike darters on tap, not in a package, but they're like on the
Yeah,
wall. And Blurple is one of those colors that I have a lot of, quite a few,
yeah.
and Parrot seems to be the two
Hmm.
colors that I stock the most for some reason.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I should count mine some point, between the live action ones, the backups, the still in package, and then the retireds. I don't even want to know what the number is, but
yeah,
thank you, Don and Steve, for producing.
yeah, exactly. And of course, that's just Super Strike.
Yeah.
Those are lined up on my wall. Those are one sort of layer, and then next to them is like the wood stuff, and then above them is another
Mhm.
layer of some wood ones too. So it takes up multiple layers on the pegboard.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when after that, I got into the original Gibbs 3-hook darters, which were no longer long past production. Scoring them off of eBay. I remember actually with going back to that spot, I had a brand new 3-hook Gibbs darter that I just got off of eBay. Was all psyched. First cast, put it into a rock, broke her off,
Oh man,
and I spent a couple bucks on that thing. That was painful.
that's brutal for sure.
Yeah, but now, yeah, I mean, nowadays the Super Strike obviously big in my rotation with the darters. The North bars on the plastic side, it's tough to beat a plastic darter for the consistency. Like, wood darters swim great, but I always have that hesitation to fishing them more, because all it takes is one rock to screw that lip up, and it just doesn't swim right. The
Yeah.
plastics they can kind of push through being deformed a little bit and still produce the proper swim, whereas the wooden ones are just more easily affected in that matter. So
Yeah, it certainly depends on the builder, I think, too, when it comes to that.
yeah.
Some are more sensitive than others.
Hmm.
A shout out to Mike's Custom. I beat the heck out of some of his, and they're all chewed up, and they keep working. But his darters are also pretty swimmy. They are
Hmm.
true darters, but they swim. And I
Yeah.
think that makes a big difference, because then they can get a little bit more beat up and still continue doing what they're supposed to do. Of course, now he makes his headbanger, which is the
I
metal.
was I was just thinking that he has the metal lip on the lip. I have one of those, which I love throwing. I mean, I beat the crap out of that thing, because I'm willing to throw it in the rocks,
Me
because I'm
too.
not like worried.
Yep.
I'm worried because replacing it is damn near impossible.
Yeah,
But
I was gonna say I'm very worried, but I'm not worried about the lip. That's for
yeah,
sure.
as long as I can keep it on the end of my line, she's gonna swim right. Got something really cool to share with you. Hobie Lures, a company that's been a favorite among Northeast anglers for years, is doing something completely new and unique. They're letting you, the listeners of the Surfcast podcast, help design their next surf fishing plug through the Franken Popper project.
Yeah, so how it works is going to be really simple. They've set up a survey to find out how you actually use the popper in the surf. Hoagie wants to understand the structure you fish, your go-to rod and reel, your time of year of actually using poppers, and key design attributes of things you actually prefer, like body size, shape, weight, and even color.
All right, so here's the deal. When you participate, you'll automatically be added to Hoagie's best kept secret, the Field Test Offer List, which grants you early access to test unreleased products. And as a thank you for helping build this legendary surf popper, participants will get a special $10 gift code good towards their next order on Hoagie's website, hoagielures.com.
So to participate, you can head over to that Hoagie site, or you can visit ours, surfcastpodcast.com/hoagielures, or simply just check out the show notes because it's down there too. Just don't wait. Hoagie's only collecting responses for a very short time. And one more thing to know, Toby, that I know you'll like. This popper will be designed to be fished with just a single hook.
As we've talked about on past episodes of the podcast, the plastic swimmer is one of the most popular plugs that's found in just about every surfcaster's bag, and there are a ton of models to choose from. With its unique body shape and lip design producing a great darting and swimming action, the standout is the Swarter by Joe Bag's Tackle.
That's right, Toby. This plug is fully through-wired, and it's available in two sizes, the 6-inch 1-ounce model and the 7-inch 1.5-ounce model. It comes in a wide variety of traditional and modern fish-catching colors like bone, blurple, sand eel, and many more. The Swarter excels in a huge variety of surf fishing conditions, from back bays to inlets, and of course, the wide open surf. It's been proven to be a great plug on both the East and West Coast for a variety of species, but particularly the striped bass.
So head on over to joebagsoutdoors.com and grab some Swarters while you support a locally owned business. And while you're there, be sure to check out the annual limited edition colorway, as well as Joe's Swarter kits, specifically tailored to meet a variety of surf fishing scenarios. So that's enough about my first or aha moment experience, what have you, on the darter. Do you have anything like that? Is there do you have a pre-darter and post-darter experience date, or did it sort of develop more over time for you?
We have a BD and an AD, before darter and after darter.
Exactly.
Time. You know what? No, I don't. And I do for the Sluggo Hoagie Skinny Soft Plastics. I have an unbelievable, it's more of a season, but I feel it that way. I have a moment for some needlefish specifics, like Dave's in particular. And also the Dock, the topwater spook, the Walk the Dog lure. I do not have a moment like that for the darter. I'll admit it. For me, it was a slow burn. The thing about me is I am fairly hard to convince without real data, except if you're someone I really trust, and then I'm very trusting of what you're saying. So when John Skinner says the darter is fantastic, or Bill Wetzel says it's all you need, which I've heard him say, but he also then says, well, the bucktail's really all you need, and the darter's second.
And the Han is all you need.
Yeah, exactly. And then he starts naming all these things you can't get anywhere. Oh, the Hellcat's what you need.
Yes.
I buy into it immediately. I'm saying, okay, this is the construct I'm operating under then. If these professionals say that this is a plug that works, then I know it works. I don't need the confidence of, is it working? Isn't it working? Oh, I don't like the way it feels. Oh, it's not catching fish like my swimmer is, blah, blah, blah. I trust. Now, again, I can be hard to convince if you're not John Skinner or Bill Wetzel, or even if you are, frankly. But I buy in. So for me, I believed in them right away, pretty much, because how could I refute what I was hearing? You know, I hear that all the time. Oh, I hear the darter's good, but it doesn't work for me. Well, then you haven't figured out how to use it, because it works quite literally everywhere, frankly. So, and a flat, sandy beach with no sweep, guess what? It still works. A shallow estuary, flat, guess what? It still works. I'm trying to name places that you wouldn't necessarily think of using these things. On top of really small bait, guess what? It works. So I was never like that. My problem was there's so many plugs out there, and I was trying to learn all of them at the same time. So as Spots interacted with me, or I interact with Spots interacted with me. What a stupid phrasing. The way when I was interacting with Spots and Bites.
Spots like, no, Jerry's back.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hey. We were high-fiving me in the Spot. As I was on top of Bites, as things progressed, we know the darter isn't always going to be the best thing. Yes, we carry it on every night, and many times, or even most times, maybe it is at particular spots, but not everywhere. We're not suggesting that, or at least I'm not.
No.
Sometimes the needlefish can be better than the soft plastic. We've talked about the soft plastics a lot recently and on the podcast. But I would get distracted. Like, the redfin's good tonight, so then I'm going to fish the redfin. So the next time I go to that spot, I'm going to fish the redfin again. And then, the redfin's not working. Well, maybe a different swimmer's going to work. So now I'm going to try a bomber. Well, that didn't work either. Well, then I'll put on a SP minnow. Put in the SP minnow, and that doesn't work. I was trying to.
When does the SP minnow not work? Come on.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So okay. Well, now it's not a swimmer. What's close? Oh, I'll try soft plastic. And by the time I get around to the darter, maybe the spot's no longer fishing because of the moon. Maybe the tide's done. Maybe that bite's over. You see what I'm saying? So for me, it was a slow burn that built up over multiple years. I will say, though, it didn't take very long. It was just a few years, maybe a couple even. Now, that said, on the flip side, getting to the point where I carried it every single night, no matter what, and having it come out of my bag every single night, that I really feel was at least, I don't know if this is the inflection point, but 2018 was a year where I didn't have a job. I had a job, but I was working basically part-time. And I was actually doing medical editing. And then later on, I was doing personal training as I was like in between trying to figure out what I was going to do. It was like a break year for me. And that year I fished. I fished a lot. You know, Dave Anderson's talked about this. Al Albano has talked about this. These breaks you get, or the times when you don't have your responsibilities, you've talked about it, where you were like, you know, on your own, practically sleeping on a couch, you told me, or something. You were still, yeah. So
sleeping anywhere.
Yeah, sleeping anywhere. That year, just the way the things worked out, the spots that I found, the things I was fishing, I think it was really the year of the darter for me. And that was, even though I was already carrying it most nights, for example, that's when I really was like, oh, wait, this works on the sand beach. Like, this really does work on the sand beach, and not on a giant sweep and big waves. Like, you can make this work, or not even make it work. It works better than other things. Like, oh, by the way, everyone listening, on the big bad sand beach with the sandbars and the troughs and stuff, I'm taking the darter over the needlefish every single friggin' time. And I'll stop there. Toby. What do you think about that phrase? I'm taking the darter over the friggin' needlefish on those big bad beaches that I fish. My first cast every time is going to be the darter over the needlefish. And if you're telling me I can only bring one of those, I'm bringing the darter. What do you think of that?
Yeah, as you were saying, I was thinking through, you definitely have got me to come around on fishing it more on the sand. It's going there from my experience. I don't know that it's going to be the first cast. It's in the first three for me, but it's still getting fished. And again, it's a place that isn't. I'm sure obviously there's some listeners out there who are like, I fish the darter on the sand all the time, but I bet there's far more a group of you that are like, darter does not go near my bag on a sand beach.
That's right. I think I'm going to give the Long Island guys credit, because I think that there's the highest percentage of anglers who are probably fishing the darter on the sand beaches is probably on Long Island. It does feel like that sort of trickled down from Montauk, Inlet, etc. And there's more. But I think in New England, and I don't know New Jersey very well at all, so I could be speaking completely out of turn, but it feels like in New England and in New Jersey, it's a less common thing versus a darter or a needle or a swimmer. Mm-hmm. And I will say, and I always want to be very careful when we say things like this, because first of all, you come off like a jackass if it's wrong. And second of all, it's probably not true, because it feels sometimes like everything that's been done has been done. But I will say that in my crew of guys who's connected to a bigger crew of guys, before they started seeing me have the success I did on the Cape sand beaches, none of them even carried one, let alone fished it. And one of my buddies who has a long history on the Cape, who's been fishing for many years, has family there, etc., he said he'd never even seen someone fish one. And of course, we know Frank Dano, he told me, I hate those things. I would never fish them.
Well, all the years I used to fish those Cape beaches, I don't even know if I had it in my truck.
That's right.
The darter wasn't even, when I was packing a Cape run, darter wasn't there. Going back 25 plus years ago, no.
And that's shocking to me, because for me, a plug isn't about a specific place, a specific bait, or a specific structure. A plug is about a presentation and a profile. And when I saw some of the structure and stuff, I was like, why wouldn't I not throw this here? And that was really all it was. It wasn't because someone told me a secret. I was just like, oh, well, this water's moving laterally. It's moving along the beach. I know it's deep enough for the dart. The darter's going to dig in. I'm just going to use it here. And I'm going to tell you, it landed me a 48-inch fish on the open sand, and a friggin' full-on open sand, not big waves, calm. I had a nice sweep. Bango, bango. I mean, what more proof do you need, Toby? Yeah. What more proof do you need? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways,
darters.
Yeah, that's my ramblings on the darter. We kind of got off track there a little bit, but
no. And again, like we said, when we started, we weren't going to get into all of it today, but we wanted to start this new season 2 of the Surfcast podcast by talking again about something we talk about in passing quite a bit, but I don't think we dedicated a full episode to it yet. So, fulfilling some wishes of those of you out there in Surfcast podcast viewer land, this was your start of the new year and the start of the darter talk.
That's right. So go to your tackle shop and buy some darters right now. This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at surfcastpodcast.com, or definitely check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at the Surfcast Podcast.